From the end of the first quarter, Clark again, heating up.
Deckers, you bet.
Women's basketball is on fire right now, and a lot of you might think it's because of Caitlin Clark. Well, that's true to some extent, but it's not just about her, but also about the other women who have stood up and taken the game to another level. Nope, we're not talking about Angel Reese and her missed layups. Instead, we're talking about Paige Bueckers and how she can possibly take the WNBA to a whole new level as well. But what you probably don't know is that Clark and Bueckers are star-crossed rivals who can both change the face of women's basketball as we know it. There is no doubt that Caitlin Clark is one of the most notable basketball players in the world. She's arguably the most popular female player today, even though she's only been in the WNBA for a year, and she can thank her popularity for her college career. Clark made history as arguably the greatest individual player of all time in all of women's college basketball. She broke records left and right, becoming the highest-scoring college player in both men's and women's basketball, even breaking Pistol Pete Maravich's longtime record. And along the way, she shot countless three-pointers and dished out a ton of assists. Of course, while it took a while for Clark to take the WNBA by storm because she needed to adjust her game, she also broke her fair share of rookie records in only her first year. She elevated the popularity of the women's game, allowing the WNBA to see all-time highs in viewership. That means there's a good chance the WNBA also saw all-time highs in profits. And we know that this league has never been profitable since its first season in 1997. Basically, Clark changed the game and made it better because of her popularity.
Team in the first half, but has picked up a triple-double here today and gets the...
She allowed the WNBA to garner more attention from fans and media alike. While not a lot of critics are happy about a white girl taking the WNBA by storm and becoming the most popular player on the planet, Clark has been riding this high and is ready to become the face of the league. And there's a good reason why she's popular. You might have heard of a guy named Stephen Curry. This dude changed basketball forever because of his outside shooting. And it's not just because he's a good shooter. Instead, it's also about the degree of difficulty of his shots and how efficient he is at taking the toughest three-pointers you could ever think of. Curry regularly takes three-pointers from beyond the three-point line, and he does so off the dribble and against tough defenses. This style of play turned him into the most magnetic player of his generation, and quite possibly the most popular player in the modern age. Yes, while he might not be as great as LeBron James, his popularity might even surpass the king. Now, if you turn Curry into a white woman with a ponytail, that's basically Caitlin Clark. She's basically the female version of Steph Curry, but also has a bit of Dame Lillard in her. Basically, she regularly takes three-pointers from way beyond the NBA three-point line. And she doesn't even need anyone to set her up because all she needs to do is have the ball in her hands and dance with her defender using her dribbles before generating enough space to pull up from the outside. There's always something magnetic about a player who worked so hard that they could take shots coaches would normally bench their players for. But Clark has mastered this style to such a degree that it's a consistent weapon for her. But as popular as Caitlin Clark may be, there's another young white girl who may actually be better than her.
Deckers a three. You bet.
And this player has been one of the few guards who consistently challenged Clark's place as the best at her position since their high school years. We're talking about Paige Bueckers. Now, in case you don't know, Bueckers was one of the most sensational female players during her high school years. She was doing things no female high school player should be doing, and that was the reason why she was ranked #1 in her recruitment class. And in case you're wondering which recruitment class that is, it's the class of 2020, the same recruitment class as Caitlin Clark herself. Every scout in the country had Paige Bueckers as their best high school prospect years ago. Meanwhile, Clark was ranked 4th, which isn't bad at all, but she wasn't the best at that time. In fact, Bueckers was the very reason why Clark didn't get a scholarship offer to go to UConn. Playing for Gino Arima and the UConn Huskies was Clark's longtime dream before she chose to go to Iowa. But Arima never gave her an offer to go to UConn because he had already committed to Bueckers. According to him, he didn't want the two girls sharing the same backcourt because they're both natural point guards who need the ball in their hands. And because he already recruited Bueckers before even taking a look at Clark, he never gave Caitlin an offer. But the rest was history because Clark went to Iowa where she lit up the entire nation. Meanwhile, Bueckers went to UConn, the most decorated college basketball program in history. And she didn't waste time proving why she was the #1 player in her recruitment class, becoming an instant sensation with the Huskies.
Lean
confident, she is mobile, and you have seen her produce.
Deckers on the other end, finishes plus the...
Buchers was named an All-American by every major publication in the country and was even the Associated Press Player of the Year as a freshman. Clark, meanwhile, had better numbers during their freshman season, but Buchers was more successful and was doing it while playing alongside equally talented teammates. At that point, there was an ongoing belief that Buchers was actually better than Clark because she could do it all. Meanwhile, Clark was more of a one-woman show capable of carrying an entire team on her back and dominating every possession. But that didn't work in her first meeting against Buchers in the NCAA tournament when they were still freshmen. Buchers' UConn defeated Iowa, all while outplaying Clark. But during her sophomore season, Buchers suffered from an ACL injury that kept her out of the team for more than a season. So, while she was recuperating from her injury in what was supposed to be her junior year, Clark took the entire nation by storm, winning every Major Player of the Year award while also making history when she made it to the NCAA final and rewrote the women's college basketball ratings book. At that point, she was the entire nation's darling, and everyone wanted to tune into Iowa games to watch Clark destroying entire teams on her own. Then she made history during her senior year, becoming the all-time leader in points scored in college and making a return trip to the NCAA championship game.
Yes, Clark. First step to the side over Hemingway, and that's her third.
Along the way, Clark met with Buchers for the first time since their matchup when they were still freshmen. Clark was already the better player at that time because she kept on improving since her freshman season. Meanwhile, Buchers' injury held her down for a year. And during that matchup in the Final Four, which became the most watched Final Four game in women's college basketball history, Clark had a revenge game by leading Iowa to a win and outplayed Buchers. The rest is history because Clark went on to lose in the 2024 NCAA Final before becoming the #1 overall pick by the Indiana Fever a week later. Meanwhile, because she redshirted a year due to injury, Buchers decided to stay with UConn for one more season instead of going to the WNBA. And this was the season that turned her into a sensation in her own right. Buchers was unstoppable in her final year in college, leading a loaded UConn team that had championship aspirations. This time, there was no Caitlin Clark stopping her from winning a title as she took her game to a higher level during the NCAA tournament. This included a 34-point output against South Dakota State and a 40-point outburst against Oklahoma.
24 points, then 17, efficient in both as well. Backers again.
She then dominated an equally strong Southern California team by going for 31 points. Eventually, she led UConn to a national championship win over South Carolina, averaging 24.8 points throughout the entire title run. So, she may not have had Clark's fan base in numbers, but what Buchers has is a national championship. And like Clark, there was no doubt that she was going to be the top overall pick of the 2025 draft. Buchers got drafted by the Dallas Wings and is set to be their franchise star for the future. And now that she's in the WNBA, she's inevitably going to be matched up with and compared to Caitlin Clark a lot of times, because these two women are arguably the best generational talents women's basketball have seen in a long time. It's hard not to compare them, because they're not only magnetic white women who appeal to a lot of people, but are also point guards. However, their styles cannot be any more different. Clark is a Steph Curry type of player who demands the ball more and makes plays for others at a Magic Johnson rate. On the other hand, Buchers is more of an all-around point guard capable of playing on and off the ball and scoring in more ways than one. Clark prefers to use her three-point shooting as her main weapon before thinking about attacking the basket. She uses her handles to create space and generate enough separation between her and the defender to either shoot from the outside or drive to the basket. On the other hand, Buchers' handles are built to create openings from anywhere on the court because she can pull up from the three-point line, dribble into a mid-range shot, or take the ball to the hoop.
Since the first quarter when she went 2 for 5, Beckers twisting into 2.
And she's also a very good playmaker, even though she does not demand the ball just as much as Clark does. Buchers was also a more efficient scorer in college. You can say it's because she had better teammates who were spacing the floor and demanding defensive attention. But Buchers simply knows how to pick her spots instead of pulling up from anywhere. But what makes Buchers unique from Clark is her defense. It's not that Clark is a bad defender, it's just that she doesn't put as much focus on her defense as she does on her offense. On the other hand, Buchers is just as dangerous on the defensive end as she is on offense. She is a defensive pest capable of hounding smaller and bigger players alike, while also playing the passing lanes to get steals. So, in other words, these are two contrasting styles. Clark's game is more appealing because people love to watch high-scoring players destroy teams with their shooting. On the other hand, Bucher's plays what you'd call winning basketball because she does everything at a high level, even if the stats don't always show her impact. This is why this rivalry will forever change the game. They are both popular players in their own right, but have different ways of doing things. And they are also both very marketable to the common fan, allowing the WNBA to capitalize on their popularity. But more importantly, they could possibly take the league to a whole new level, not only in terms of their skills, but also when it comes to how much revenue they're going to generate for the WNBA. People love rivalries, especially when they involve popular players. In this case, it's going to be a battle between the one-woman army versus a proven winner who plays a winning style. But at the end of the day, we're all the winners because we're the ones ultimately benefiting from this matchup.